It's not what you know, it's what you can prove.
You know how to cut to the core of me, Baxter. You're so wise. But like a miniature Buddha, covered in hair.
I want to become a guru so girls will like me. Then I will like myself.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
This episode is brought to you by Hack Motion. Hack Motion is a cutting-edge wrist sensor for teaching wrist motion for compressed tour-like shots. I spent some time with these guys down at the show, and I really enjoyed how easy it was to use, and the calibration time was super simple, and especially the biofeedback option that will definitely make for a more effective golf lesson for your students. You can use it with your iPhone, your iPad, and it gives your students the feel to go along with the reel as you teach the proper wrist motion for better club face control, which, as you know, is huge in the teaching game. Used by some of the top coaches in our industry, Hack Motion is a must for serious golf teachers, coaches, or players. Also, when ordering upon checkout, use the promo code GURU, GURU, to receive free shipping, which is a $30 value. For more information and to order, visit their website at hackmotion.com. HACKMOTION.com today. What's up, all you high performers out there? Welcome to the Golf Guru Show. I'm your host, Jason Sutton, aka The Guru, where it is my mission to deconstruct the habits, life lessons, daily rituals, and many other ideas that can hopefully add to your teaching and self-development toolbox that can assist you in helping your students or change your life in a positive way. And if you're interested in the latter, you're going to love my next guest, Mr. Michael Zildjian. Michael is an author, a speaker, and a podcaster that has written a great book called Zilosophy on Golf that I know you're going to enjoy reading. We were introduced by a mutual friend, Chris Trevino, who has been on the podcast. If you haven't listened to his interview, you need to go back and check it out, as it's one of the most downloaded shows to date. But listen to this one first. For those of you that are into music, and specifically drummers, this name should sound familiar, as Michael's family heritage tracks back to the origination of the Zildjian cymbals that are very well known. But we're not here to talk about music. We're here to talk about his latest endeavor, which is his new book that does a great job in paralleling life with golf and also teaching golf. So I think you're going to really enjoy this conversation. So before we get to the interview, I want to give you a quick bio on Michael. After moving on from careers as a concert promoter / producer, licensing rep for TV / film, marketing branding consultant, bartender, rideshare driver, and a disposable lighter repairman, never knew that even existed, to name just a few, Zildjian decided it was time to take his passion for philosophical conversations to the next level. And thus, Zilosophy was born, a place where Zildjian could build a platform for public dialogue about the things he had always pondered with his friends, family, and strangers. Zildjian is not a therapist, he makes that very clear, and he makes no professional therapeutic claims about his musings. He's just a guy you might want to have a beer with in hopes you might get some needed perspective on life, or a good laugh, or both, which is definitely the case with Michael. Such a great guy, and I really enjoyed spending time with him as we met at the PGA show and hung out, which was really cool. And Michael now tours the U.S. and internationally speaking about Zilosophy at golf clubs, schools, corporate offices, barnyards, arcades, and anywhere else people want to learn ways to bring their best to the golf course and beyond. So without further delay, let's get to this awesome conversation with my friend Michael Zildjian. Michael Z, welcome to the show.
Hey, man. What's up? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I've been looking forward to this interview for a long time because we've got a mutual friend that connected us, Mr. Chris Trevino, that's been on the podcast. And then I
loved this episode, man. That
was good, wasn't it?
And it's not what you normally do on this podcast,
exactly.
But it was a lot of fun for me to listen to.
And then we connected a few weeks ago at the PGA show, and I know you're doing great with the new book, which I appreciate you sending me a copy, and I enjoyed the read. and I made a lot of notes and did a lot of research, and I'm excited to kind of dig into your book, Zilosophy. But let's get to your background first, because I think you've got an interesting history and with your family, and because we know, as if you followed you in the last few weeks, that this isn't your first career, right? I mean, this is kind of a new venture for you. So I think it's exciting. But take us back through your history and tell us how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. Well, again, thanks for having me, and I've been excited and looking forward to this too, because, this first book, Zilosophy on Golf, which for you listeners out there is available on Amazon, paperback and Kindle, is my first book, and really I chose golf as the vehicle because it's a game that I love and it's taught me a lot. But yeah, you're right. I don't know if I could count how many careers I've had at this point. If you read my bio, which I know you have in the book,
yeah,
I think there's about 7 or 8 listed in there, and that's not all the stuff I've done. But yeah, this is an interesting thing. I was in the entertainment business for almost 20 years. That's what I always wanted to do. Went to college, grew up in Boston, and then went to Southern California to go to college at Pepperdine, and was really interested in music and the music business, and making a change in that business eventually so that it was more artist oriented. That was always sort of my dream and my passion, and I did eventually get into that right before I left it. But yeah, I worked as a concert promoter for many years, ran venues at a casino and at a winery, big 5,000 seat, 7,500 seat venues, and worked in artist management and worked for a record label and did a lot of entertainment based stuff, which is has been interesting background for me to have now. But at some point, I guess it was about 5 years ago now, coming up on 6 maybe, yeah, because that was 2013. I had been thinking that maybe there was a different career for me. I wasn't super fulfilled being in entertainment. It had been kind of become a chore to me, which is funny because it's something I always gave advice to kids when they started to come to me and ask me about being in the film business or TV business or music business. And I would always say, well, be careful, because eventually it kind of kills your passion for that thing that you love so much, because it turns to just a job. And one of the stories I like to tell is that when I would go do a concert weekend and produce and promote 3 concerts in a row of 15, 16-hour days, my friends would say, oh, cool, have fun. And I'd say, screw you. I don't tell you to have fun when you're going to work. And then that made me realize, well, maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe I should be happy when people tell me to go have fun at work, and maybe I should be doing something else. And then the Boston Marathon bombing happened, and that hit close to home, quite literally. I grew up 6 miles from the site where the bombing took place, and they actually caught the bombers a quarter mile from the house I grew up in. So that really shook me and made me realize that, hey, we're doing this wrong, and maybe I could do something. Since I'm thinking about doing something different, maybe I could do something where it would spread positivity and self-awareness to people, and sort of lead to something more fulfilling for me, and being a beacon of light in a world that was getting crazier and crazier by the minute.
Yeah, I understand that. We need a little bit more of that, don't we?
Yeah. So that started a journey of like, well, what the heck am I going to do? I had thought, well, maybe I should be a writer and a speaker and a podcaster, but I didn't know anything about any of those things. So super fast forward to 5 years later, I've got my first book out. I just launched my podcast where I've got 2 episodes. You said you heard the first one. It's called the Zilosophy Podcast. I'm about to start writing my second book, and now I'm going out and speaking at high schools and doing corporate speaking gigs, and it's really amazing the transition I've made. But that was not an easy road, dude, and I don't recommend it for most people. Unless it's something you feel like you have to do, as I did. I felt like I had to do it, and I had no idea if it would work. But the really cool part was I didn't know how to write a book, so I just sat down and did it. And then you've read the book, and we'll
Yes.
start talking about, a lot about that stuff. But the really cool part was I had to practice all this stuff that I was writing about in order to accomplish actually writing a book that might mean something to
Sure.
someone
Setting
else.
the example, right? I mean,
Yeah,
you got to have some
it's
credibility.
setting an example, but that's a huge part of this for me is authenticity and
Sure.
setting that example of living a life that's authentic about these principles. But I'm talking about even before that. I actually could not have accomplished writing the book if I wasn't practicing the things that I was writing about in the book. It would have never happened.
Sure. Makes
You know,
sense.
just patience, for instance.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there, I'm writing. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if anybody's ever going to like this, but I'm just pouring out words and being patient with myself and trying not to judge myself and judge the work so that I can actually finish the work and show it to someone and see if they think it's worth anything.
Sure. How much did your family background play into that? Because I don't think many of the listeners know the Zildjian name is pretty famous in the music business, right? I mean, give us a little bit of background on that, and then we'll dig into this book.
Yeah, sure. We'll do that pretty quickly. But if you want a diver deep into that, listen to episode 2 of the Zilosophy podcast because
Little teaser.
I do. Yeah, you know, like I said, I'm an entertainment guy.
Yeah,
man.
I know. I get it.
This stuff. I do get that question a lot. So I thought it was important on my podcast to just address it right off the bat. And
Sure.
also, it's been a great thing for me, man. I'm super proud of my family heritage. For those who don't know, Zildjian Cymbals is probably the most famous drum cymbal company in the world. Most of you, if not all of you, have seen it on videos when you're watching concerts and you see the Zildjian logo under the cymbals. So yeah, that's my family heritage. And when I was a kid going into the music business, I thought, well, I don't want to use my name. I want to make my own name. And then I quickly realized that that's dumb. This is a name that has opened up many doors for me and gotten
Sure.
me into many conversations that I might not have ever gotten into. And so it's been a great tool for me. But just to quickly go through the family history, I had an ancestor who was an alchemist in the early 1600s in Turkey. And he was an Armenian guy living in Turkey and an alchemist and probably trying to make gold, as most alchemists were at that time, and somehow came up with this alloy that sounded very different than any other alloy he had ever created or heard, I suppose, and went to show it to the Sultan of Turkey. And basically the Sultan said, "That's great, you work for me now, and you're going to be the Turkish court cymbal maker," which is where the name Zildjian comes from. It's actually a made-up name. Zil in Turkish means cymbal. The DJ sound, J, in Armenian means craftsman. And the IAN sound, or YAN, at the end of an Armenian name means son or daughter of. So it literally translates to son of a cymbalsmith or daughter of a cymbalsmith.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and so this guy made cymbals for the Turkish court, and they would use them when they went to war on other villages or cities, and they'd make all this noise as they were approaching to scare the crap out of the enemy and make mental warfare. But then a few years later, somehow he was able to get pardoned and from the king and was able to start his own private business, and that started in 1623 in Turkey, the Zildjian cymbal business. And then fast forward, it was passed down eldest son to eldest son for generations. And then when my grandfather and great uncle were in America in the 1920s, it was my great uncle's turn to take over the business. But he didn't want to go back to Turkey. So he somehow convinced his uncle to come over here and show them how to make cymbals. And they had a candy business in Quincy, Mass. And were making candy by day and in the same ovens making cymbals by night. And shortly thereafter, during the Great Depression, my grandfather left the business, and my great uncle Avedis Zildjian made the company into what we know it as now. This great business that's been involved and innovated in the music business. He actually was part of a group of professionals and musicians that created the hi-hat cymbal, for instance. That didn't exist until the late 20s or early 30s in this country. And he traveled all over the country and all over the world selling this stuff, and he turned it into this great business. And another little bit of history that I'll end on is that the Avedi Zildjian company, based in Norwell, Mass. It's an awesome place where they do great tours of the factory, by the way. If you ever want to check it out, or any of the listeners do, just call them and you can get on a tour. But it's the longest continually family-run business in the United States.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So like you said, it's a very interesting history, and it's how it played into my story is that, like I said, it was a great thing when I was in the music business. I've never worked for the company, and that's a longer story of when my grandfather left. Our side of the family was sort of out because of his decision, and it was certainly understandable. And again, you can hear more about that on my podcast. I won't go into that detail, but I've always been close with them and worked with them, and been friendly with them, and we see each other at trade shows, and we share contacts with each other. But like I said, the name for me has always been something that has caused people to stop and take a second look, which is the window that I use to say whatever it is I have to say in that moment, right?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into the book a little bit. I think it's really cool how you laid it out, where each chapter is a hole of golf, and you have the opportunity after reading the chapter to score yourself in how you did. And then you have pro tips, and you have little tidbits at the end of, practice, things. So very, very similar to an instructional book that is not an instructional book. It's just a great reminder, I think, for all of us of life lessons, self-development ideas, plus a little bit of golf and some great quotes in there that I think ties it all together really, really well. So how did you come up with that concept? And then we can kind of dig into the chapters that you want to talk about. And then I've got a lot of notes on my favorite chapters as well.
Sure. Awesome. Yeah, well, that was a great introduction to the book. I almost don't have to say anything now. Thanks.
Sure.
But yeah, first I want to say that you're right about it. You nailed it about how you described it, all kidding aside. But to me, it's not a self-help book. I don't think people need help, or golfers need help. We just all need awareness and honesty and commitment to practicing the things that make us better. So that's really what the book's about. But how I came up with it is a pretty interesting story. Like I said, I was sort of working on this thing of changing and building this new career and wanting to write something, having never written anything of significance since I was in college. And even the stuff I wrote in college was not that significant. And how would I do it? So I wanted to do this thing where I spread positivity in the world, right? And I thought, and my friends said too, like, well, why are people going to listen to you? I had always talked philosophically with my friends and family and helped people bring perspective and awareness through my gift of articulation and saying things that you've probably heard before, but maybe you didn't hear it in this way. So maybe you'll actually hear it this time. So I was thinking about all this stuff, right? And then I literally had a dream one night that was about 3 of the chapters in the book, which was, if you play golf in a way that you just really commit to visualizing the shot you're trying to hit, really see it, feel it, however that works for you, because we're all different, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. If you just visualize the shot and then you commit to that brief moment of impact where you actually make contact with the ball, which is just a split second, right? So you've got to set yourself up and just kind of let go to get yourself to that split second to be fully present. And then once you make contact, you just let go, because you release, or as I talk about it in the book, you release attachment to outcome, because you've done everything you can now, and whatever's going to happen now is out of your control. And I literally had this dream about that, and I was like, wow, that was really interesting. That's a pretty interesting way to play golf, and a pretty interesting way to live life, that if we all were that focused and committed and present and accepting of whatever happens from whatever we're doing, that would be a really free way to play and live. And so a couple days later, I find myself on a golf course with a couple of buddies, and I think, all right, that was a really cool dream. All I'm going to do today is just practice that. Those three things. I'm not going to have any other swing thoughts, any other mental thoughts. Visualize, commit to the moment of impact, and let go. On the third hole, short par 3, I got a pitching wedge in. I landed it about 6 inches from the cup, and it trickled to about 3-4 feet behind. And I just missed making a hole in one, which excuse me, to that point I hadn't made one yet. And I thought, oh, damn, I'm onto something here.
Right.
Whether that's a sign or what, I don't know, but something is telling me that I should proceed with this concept. And really that's how the book was born.
Yeah, that's probably that point. And I guess that was chapter 6, I think, in the book, The Moment of Impact, where you're talking about that the attachment to outcome, or trying to get our players to not worry so much about the result and stay in the process, is something all golf coaches and golf teachers are trying to get their students to do. So that was probably the most accurate piece that you sort of stumbled upon, that as golf instructors, we're all trying to get our students to have that kind of acceptance. That's a huge word that you use there, is acceptance, because, we are so attached to the result and the outcome that it really gets in the way of our, like you said, your authentic swing. But, it's a lot more than that, obviously, but it's definitely a freeing part of, I think, when great players are playing their best.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's certainly helped me in my game. The interesting thing is that I've played golf probably less this year than I have in any of the last 10 or 15 years as I wrote this golf.
Busy doing all this other stuff now.
Yeah, exactly. I finally got something I'm really super passionate about, so most of my time and energy is going to that. But yeah, as a practice, so what you sort of combined two ones there, so let me just clarify, was that the moment of impact is about being present. That split second when you're hitting the ball is everything that matters in your golf swing and your approach and all that. Everything poured into one fraction of a second causes the ball to go wherever it's going to go. And so that's the moment of impact. And the next chapter after that is chapter 6,
yes.
By the way.
Yeah.
The next chapter after that is chapter 7, which is called Play It As It Lies, and it's all about acceptance. And to me, there's some really cool stuff in there, because there's one, you've done everything you can. So whether you made a bad swing or you got a bad break, it doesn't matter now. And to me, that's what made Tiger Woods so good when he was so good, and we were all watching in awe as he just tore the golf world apart. His practice of letting go whatever just happened. I mean, people forget, the younger kids especially, they don't forget, they didn't know because they didn't watch it live like we did. Tiger used to spray the ball all over the place all the time.
Sure.
He was never very consistent, right?
Exactly.
But whenever he sprayed it, he got to that next shot, and there was zero attention or effort given to what just happened. Everything was about what's in front of him right now. And I just thought that was a really good analogy, and a really good thought about acceptance, that like if you can just continue to stay present, now you're present into the next moment of impact, and you're also accepting. In order to get there, you have to accept what just happened, whatever it was, good or bad. And then that allowed him to create some of the best shots we've ever seen in golf history, right?
For sure.
From when he was in jail and he had to manufacture something that no one thought was possible except him.
Exactly.
And I think that's before I let you continue, I think that's a really good thing for all of us. One of the stories I tell in that chapter is about when I hit it into the woods one day. I kind of duck hooked a 3-wood or a 3 hybrid into the woods one day, and I had this shot in front of me where I was like, Jesus, well, if I hit an absolutely perfect 7-iron, it's the right club and the right distance, but it's got to be perfect. And, finding yourself in that situation where you have to challenge yourself to do something that you don't know if you can do it in life is really cool. And golf is, again, one of those great metaphors that allows you to practice that. And so here I am staring at these giant pine trees playing somewhere in Massachusetts, that if I hit this perfect shot, I can get it on the green. And don't you know, that day I pulled it off and I hit it to about 10 feet. and promptly missed the birdie putt, as you do.
It's all right.
But hell, par was a great score from where I was that day, and I
Sure.
was happy it wasn't a double bogey because that's what I was looking at. And that's the great thing is when we miss or we get a bad break, it does provide us an opportunity to overcome a challenge that we're not sure if we can overcome it. And then if we do, we get this great feeling of confidence that, wow, I actually did something really important. Or maybe it's not that important. Maybe it's just a golf shot playing with your buddies. Or maybe you're a pro and it is really important and it means, a 6-figure check as opposed to a 5-figure check.
Yeah, absolutely. The parallels are unmatched, and I think that's why this book is so great. It ties everything together. So it's starting, I think you frame it nicely too, from the first chapter and then ending with, enjoy the journey in the last chapter. But I was going to read something in the first chapter that I thought kind of sets up an interesting conversation. And you say in a philosophical sense, it's not about getting better because we are bad or we're not good enough. It's about trusting the best version of us, and it has always been a part of us, and simply choosing that version over the other available options. That's something I talk a lot about on this podcast, is just trying to be a better version of yourself. And I know in one of the other chapters you talk about playing against par, or just trying to be your best self instead of worrying about what everybody else is thinking about you. And that's something that I struggle with a lot, because when you set high goals, it's just hard not to think about what's everybody saying about you, or especially with now the social media things that are going on. It's easy to fall into that trap. But I thought that was a great way to kind of start it out. So really what that says to me is it's all about making choices, whether it's daily choices if you're trying to change habits, or yearly choices, setting goals. Expand on that a little bit, and then we can kind of dig into more of your favorite parts.
Yeah. Jesus, you nailed a lot there. I mean, really, I could talk for about 3 hours about what you just said, and I'm not being silly. I mean that. It's crazy how much what you just said is really at the core of this whole thing with this book and philosophy in general, which is not just about golf, but on this show, obviously it is. First thing I want to say is, hearing you read my words back to me in that way was actually really emotional there for me for a minute to hear that, because I'm thinking, wow, that's some pretty good stuff right there.
Absolutely.
So I just want to say that, because again, what I'm all about is authenticity and honesty, and I don't have any of this stuff all figured out. This is all stuff I'm working on too. So to hear some guidance from myself, it's pretty weird experience, and really cool. So, but yeah, what you said is really accurate. Let's see. I mean, where to start? Choices is really important, right? Everything's a choice.
Yes.
We can choose to be pissed off. We could choose to beat ourselves up when we make a bad swing, when we hit a bad shot. Or we can choose to accept that that wasn't our best and that's okay, and move on to the next one. Because as humans, we're flawed, and we're not always going to make great swings. The best golfers in the world miss all the time. I think that's a really important key for golfers to understand, and I know that most understand it, but I don't think most think about that enough. The best players in the world miss all the time. Now, their misses are a lot better than ours as amateurs or as lower level professionals, right? But they still miss. We all miss, and that's really important. We're not the same. We're all different. That's what Swing Your Swing is about. We all have a unique thing that we bring to life and that we bring to golf. And it's about uncovering the best version of our swing and the best version of ourselves, so that we can continue to live a fulfilled life. Because we won't get into this too much now, but you just touched on at the end of this, and I'll give away the punchline early. Life and golf are really difficult games. They're not meant to be easy. You don't learn crap from either of them when it's easy. You learn
Correct.
When you go through the hard times and the struggles. But even though they're not easy, they're meant to be fun. And you're supposed to enjoy this. So how do we get out of our own way enough so that we make good enough choices. We're being self-aware. We're being honest with ourselves so that we're continuing to improve and work on uncovering our best so that ultimately we can enjoy the game. So we can go out. When I go out and play a round of golf now, I'm not obsessed about the score or what's going to happen. It's just like with me with writing the book that I talked about earlier. I didn't know how it was going to play out, if it was going to work. To me, it was really about taking that thing we've heard 1,000 times, just enjoy the journey, it's a journey, that kind of like pisses you off after a while, right? But
it's not that easy.
It really is about that.
Sure.
That if we could just I don't know what's going to happen here with this shot, with this round, but what I'm going to do is commit to making a choice to choose joy. Because really, that's a choice too. We can choose to be pissed off. We can choose to be happy whenever we want. Usually choosing to be pissed off is not our best. And in later chapters, I don't want to jump around too much, but if you think about, we've all thrown tantrums on the golf course when we've hit a bad shot and not lived up to our potential or our expectations or what we think is our best. But how often has that led to us playing better? Almost never,
right?
If not never.
Yeah, I think that you made an important point there of being self-aware, and that's something that I talk a lot about on this podcast because I think it's a crucial part of the EQ of what we do as golf instructors or just as humans in general. So is that something trainable in your opinion, or is that something that just is picked up along the way because of maybe outside influences, the people you hang out with, or maybe things like you said, the failures in your life that maybe you come out on the other side with a success? I mean, what do you think about that? Self-aware is it's something I'm very curious about that point.
It's absolutely 100% trainable. The problem is that as people and as golfers, we don't take the time to train ourselves. And again, Zilosophy on Golf, available on Amazon, is the training tool for that. Like I said at the beginning, and I wasn't just trying to make it sound good, this isn't a self-help book. You don't need help. You need to be aware. I do too. We all do. That's why I wrote this book for me just as much as anyone else, to make myself accountable to be self-aware. Because like you touched on earlier, I never wanted to be one of those guys that's Mr. Motivational Speaker, read my 7 points of success and be like me and you'll have a better life. No, don't be like me. I can barely be like me. And we're all like that. But what we can all do is be more self-aware. And so I had to be authentic about that so that when I do these things, and I still trip up on all of these concepts too, but I'm much more aware of it because I'm talking about it all the time on, as I'm doing press like this, or as I'm doing my own podcast, or as I'm writing another book, or doing a talk at a high school or at a corporation or an organization. That's the main thing. It's about self-awareness, because a lot of us go through life and we just think, well, this is the way I am and that's it. It's not going to change. But we have the ability to choose something different all the time. We're just not self-aware enough to actually do it. And so, yeah, it's 100% trainable. And for you golf coaches out there that are wondering about this and, wanting to get your players to a different level on the mental side of the game, this book, and it sounds like I'm patting myself on the back, but I'm hearing this from all kinds of people all over the golf world and outside of the golf world. Non-golfers are loving this book because it's teaching them how to be more self-aware so that they can then be more honest with themselves about where they are and the choices that they're making, so that then they can commit to making the choices that allow them to be their best. It all starts with self-awareness. So if you can't get that part down, you're just going to continue to do the things that you've always done. And as people, we fall into these traps and these routines where, like I said, this is the way I am. And I thought that about my golf swing. There's a story in the book that you've read that I was self-taught, never had a lesson, played for 17 or 18 years with a gross slap fade that I thought was good enough and I thought was my best. And I played enough where I could steer it around, and I'm a decent enough putter that I could scrape a score together. Thank Pepperdine for that. On the front lawn of Pepperdine, there's these little golf holes where when I was there as a student, you could use them. Now only the golf team can use them. But I spent hours out there by myself just chipping and putting, and realized that, wow, that's the trick with chipping and putting. It's not about technique or form. It's about putting in the endless hours to get the feel down so that you're confident enough to scratch out a score when you're spraying it, which is what I did all the time. But then I had a friend who was a scratch golfer and said, can I just teach you how to swing properly? Can I teach you a proper golf swing? And I resisted that for a long time because I thought I was good enough, and this was enough for me. And then I realized I wasn't being true to myself. I wasn't being true to my best. And that if I allowed this person to come in and help me, and that's a big theme in this book too, is getting outside help and coaching from a technical and mental standpoint, that there was something better deep inside me that I had just on a golfing level. And again, that taught me, well, where am I selling myself short elsewhere in my life that I could be better? And I think that that's an important point, that we accept mediocrity from ourselves at times, and we shouldn't. That where's the honesty about what we're really capable of and what we could really do if we stopped judging ourselves so harshly or stopped accepting things that are less than what we're capable of.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm just looking at my scorecard here for your book, and I came out of the gates pretty hot. I went birdie, birdie, birdie. Was feeling pretty good about myself, and then I come to the fourth chapter, which is controlling your emotions and being sort of present. And I made a huge bogey there. It might have been a double,
right?
Because it's so difficult nowadays, right? Because I mean, especially when you're trying to be a high performer, I feel like I've got so many things going on, and I have a very difficult time quieting my mind a lot of times.
Yeah.
Any tips on that? For a friend.
Tons. For first, yeah, exactly. But first, I want to unpack a little bit of the other things that you said when you come out birdie, birdie, birdie. That's great, and I love when people tell me that stuff, that they're really working on these things and they're being present and aware. But if you're not making bogeys in this book, you're not being honest.
Exactly. Yeah.
Nobody's going through this and burning every hole. We're not Kim Jong-un, who shot. What was that fake score he posted of like 38 or 48 or something, right? It's about being honest, and we go through life, and I'm going to talk about what you mentioned, but you brought up a really important thing, that we go through life, and again, we're comparing ourselves constantly due to social media and a 24-hour news cycle, and we're out there trying to project the best part of ourselves to the world. By the way, you people tell me all the time on my social media, oh, you live the best life, you travel so much, you're so happy all the time. No, I'm not. I'm just like you. I'm just like everybody else.
Right.
I just don't post photos of me sitting by myself on a couch sad, eating a pint of ice cream. But I do that too.
Right.
I just, there's a thing there about comparing ourselves. But it's also that comparison leads to this fallacy that we think we need to be perfect and that we need to project ourselves as perfect. We're not perfect. We're not meant to be. Like I said, the best golfers in the world miss shots all the time. The best humans in the world make mistakes all the time. The Dalai Lama is not perfect. Just ask him. He'll tell you,
right,
because he's a very honest guy. So I think the first thing is, when you're talking about scoring yourself in this book, be honest and not brutally like you're beating yourself up. By the way, there's a chapter about self-criticism in the book where I scored myself a double bogey because I can be brutal on myself.
As we all can.
Right. We all can. One thing I learned in going through this is that this is a truth for all human beings. We are all our own worst critics. There's not a close second. You think about somebody that's being critical to you. There's no way they're even close to how critical you are on yourself. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So we need to learn to give ourselves a break. That's another concept. But perfection is not attainable, so we shouldn't strive for it. It's about being our best, and we're being our best when we're being honest. So score yourself honestly so that you can identify the things that you need to work on. that transitions into what you just asked me. How do we clear our minds? I talk a lot about in that chapter about meditation. This isn't a super spiritual book or a high-level philosophy book. It's super light and digestible for anybody. Yet meditation is the best way I've found to clear my head. I spent years and years of my life trying to deal with anxiety and stress by drinking my way through it and using alcohol as a crutch. And as golfers, we all know that, right? You
Sure.
get a few holes into a round, and you're thinking, I'm playing like crap. My brain is a mess. I'm just going to start drinking, and then I'll relax. And it does work in the short term, but
Sure.
in the long term, it robs us from an opportunity to find a more healthy approach to clearing our minds and becoming relaxed. And to me, the best one I've found is meditation. I'm on a streak now of it's close to 60 days in a row of meditating every day, and I just feel a lot more calm. And I feel like the time I spend in the morning, which is only like 5 or 10 minutes of just putting on some relaxing music and just clearing my mind, and also during that time, not just letting go and thinking about nothing, which is the practice of meditation and clearing your mind, but also setting an intention for the day of what you want your day to be about, whether it's about patience or positivity or focus, whatever that is that you're working on. It's a great time to do that. And then I end the end of my day by putting on really relaxing meditative music where I meditate for a few minutes, and then I just fall off into a deep, calm sleep. And so that is a practice that anybody can do. It doesn't cost anything. There are tons of free meditation apps out there. I use one called Insight Timer, where it has all kinds of free stuff. There are guided meditations. There are ones specific for athletes. I've found some cool ones that I use for golf. And again, in that meditative state, when you're clearing your mind, that sets up the space for visualizing what you want to accomplish on the golf course. I've spent times where and I teach this to some of the young golfers that I work with, because I do some golf coaching for some young golfers, and also for Jason Gore. Again, Jason Gore is a professional golfer who wrote the foreword to this book. He's practiced a lot of this stuff in the book, and it's really helped him revive his career. I don't take credit for that, and I don't take credit for anybody doing anything, because I can't hit golf shots for anybody, right? And I can't do anything for anybody that I advise them on. It's up to you to take that and actually practice it. But it does help. And one of the things that I've worked on, and I've worked with some young golfers on, is sitting down and closing your eyes and actually visualizing an entire round of golf shot by shot.
I like that.
If you practice that, especially for you golfers and you coaches in the Northeast and the Midwest in the winter when you can't get out and practice as much, use the practice of visualization, because there's actually studies on this, and I mentioned one in the book. They lined up these 3 groups of foul shot shooters, free throw shooters, and they said, all right, the first group is going to shoot foul shots in practice. The second group is not going to shoot at all. They're just going to visualize shooting foul shots. And the third group is the controlled group. They're not going to do anything. They measure one session of shooting foul shots, and then they do all this practice, whatever their group is, with the third group doing nothing, and then they measure again. And what they showed was, of course, the control group didn't show any improvement or change because they didn't do anything. But the ones who shot free throws and the ones who visualized shooting free throws actually improved at the same rate.
Interesting.
So as golfers in the winter time, you can learn to meditate and clear your mind so that you can then lie down with a clear mind and actually visualize the practice of swinging the club. And it's crazy. I know it sounds crazy. I'm telling you, I've tried it, and I have golfers that have tried it. I don't know how it works, but it works.
So before we get into some of my rapid fire questions here, where do you want to get? You can go to anywhere you want in the book. What was your favorite chapter to write, or some of your big points that you want to make to the audience about it?
I'm actually going to answer that the opposite way. My least favorite chapter to write was the chapter called Critic's Choice, which is about self-criticism. Because I can be brutally critical of myself and judgmental of myself and what I think my expectations of my best are. And did I do enough in that moment? Did I hit that shot perfectly, or did I give my best to that, and it really woke me up, because when I went and scored myself to par, that, like I said, I scored myself a double bogey on that chapter because I was being brutally honest. That's something I need to work on, and it's something I still continue to work on a year and a half later from when I scored myself a double bogey. I'm a lot closer to a bogey now. There are days where I make par, and there are days where I still make double bogey. But it's something, like I said, that I thought was really important for me to be honest and expose myself to people about one of my shortcomings, which is that, and probably my biggest shortcoming, that if we can let our guard down and talk to each other honestly and openly that, hey guys, this is something I'm working on and I need your support, and if you can hold me accountable in a compassionate way, in an empathetic way, not like, hey jerk, you're judging yourself again, stop it, but like, hey dude, maybe you shouldn't be so hard on yourself, and just gently remind me about that was a really cool thing. And then maybe that would cause other people to let their guard down and admit openly and honestly and publicly that, hey, I'm not perfect either. And we all need to work on stuff. And if we all support each other and working on stuff, we'll play better golf and we'll live better, more fulfilled lives.
Yeah, self-talk is a huge deal, obviously, in golf. And I always say, be your own coach, right? I mean, if you talk, like I tell some of my kids or some of my players, like if you talk to yourself, like if you would talk to your friends the way you talk to yourself, then you wouldn't have any friends.
Right.
You know?
And I think that's a great one. I mean, how many times, all of us, I still do this. Sure. I'm a lot better at it. I still do this. I did it a couple days ago when I was playing. Hit a shot. You've just hit like 3 great shots, and then you hit a shot that you're like, what the F, you moron? Like, what are you doing out here? And again, when you go down that path, and this, some people have called it that downward spiral of self-talk, how often does that lead to you playing better? Because you're being so harsh on yourself. Almost never.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
So again, it's about being aware and making a better choice. That, hey, is my choice going to be to beat myself up right now because I just duffed that chip that I know I'm well capable of making? I mean, for me, in the last round I played, like I said, I haven't been playing a lot, so my timing's off. So I can hit a couple good shots, but to play a consistent round for me right now is just nearly impossible because I'm not putting in the reps.
Well, and expectations are probably a little out of whack as well, right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, not for me in this sense, because I don't have high expectations because I know I haven't been practicing. But yeah, you touch on another great chapter, that expectations that we put on ourselves and others can be our own worst enemy. But for me, my go-to zone is I learned the dead arm 3/4 sand wedge from 80 yards. And if I hit a bad tee shot, I can get it to 80 yards, and half the time I can get it up and down from there.
Nice.
And then four times in a row the other day playing, I just straight chunked it. And left it 20 yards short. And then I finally hit one, clipped it perfectly, but I was a little too quick, so I pulled it. And I'm sitting there going, I know that I'm capable of a lot more than this, but I was able to not really beat myself up in that moment and judge myself. And then what I did was on the final hole, I kind of sprayed the ball all over, and I was like, all right, that's, whatever, that's a double, triple bogey. I'm done for the day, but I'm going to practice this one shot to show myself that I know I'm capable of hitting it. So I dropped the ball at 80 yards and I clip it perfectly. And don't you know, I hit it to 6 feet, which is the thing I've been trying to do all day. And I was able to sort of bring myself, I could have gone into that craziness of self-talk. You're terrible. This is your shot. Why can't you hit it today? Da, 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 da. Instead, I thought, well, I know I'm capable of that. So let me just try it one more time so that I can just build that little bit of confidence to take into the next round that I know I can hit that shot. And I did, and it felt great. And missed the putt and shook hands and moved on.
There you go. So you wrapped it up nicely. Chapter 17, I enjoyed the one quote that you said, through the most pain comes growth. I thought that was really good. And then 18, enjoy the journey. And then the Ben Hogan quote is phenomenal. We've all heard, as you walk down the fairway of life, you must smell the roses, for you only get one get to play one round. And I think that's just a great way to kind of wrap up your book, because we have to remind ourselves that, hey, life is short. You better live it to your best, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big one for everybody, right? We get so caught up in all this minutia in our lives that we forget the point. The point is to enjoy it. And it's the same of golf. You said earlier that there are so many parallels between life and golf. And when I was promoting this book and going around to golf tournaments and going on TV and radio and promoting it, one thing I heard over and over again is, gosh, there are so many parallels between life and golf. I don't know why anybody's never written a book like this before. And I would always answer, well, I don't know either, but you can't say that anymore because I have now.
There it is.
So
boom.
I'm glad I was able to fill that need that apparently everybody wanted. But yeah, I mean, the real points of golf and of life are that they're difficult. And those difficulties are what teach us. That's what helps us grow. And we want to resist that a lot. Many of us can relate to that relationship that we stayed in too long, or that similar type of relationship, romantically I'm speaking of, or not even, it could be in a career sense or a friendship.
The job that you hated, that you didn't want to prove yourself. But then you keep going back and
getting that same kind of job.
Right.
And so the lesson is there right in front of you, saying, don't do this. This is not the path for you.
Self-awareness.
But then you keep banging your head off the wall and you're going, well, I'm going to do it again. Yeah. This girl seems nice. She has all the red flags that my last girlfriend had, but hey, let me date her anyway and see what happens. You know what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
But you do it
anyway. Same result.
So chapter 17 you're talking about is called Lessen the Pain, and it's spelled in a metaphoric kind of way. Lesson, Lesson, ... the pain, because when you learn, the pain diminishes.
Yes.
And one thing we do, we don't learn lessons, and we keep doing the same repeatable things over and over again that we know are going to give us the results that we don't want, but we do it anyway. And we get so frustrated and aggravated. And we're the ones doing it. We're the ones making the choice to put ourselves in this situation again. And we do it on the golf course, getting pissed off at ourselves. We make that choice. We wonder why we're not enjoying. Why do I play this stupid game? It's not even fun. Because you're not choosing to have fun. You're choosing to be obsessed about a score or a swing. And when we learn the lessons that are presented to us on the golf course, it does become easier. It never gets easy. Guys, this is not going to get easy. Golf will never be an easy game. No. Ask the best players in the world that have ever played the game. If it's easy for them now, it's easier than it is for us, but it's not easy. Because you never know where you're going to be on a given day. Some days you just don't have it for whatever reason, and that's what that's what Swing Your Swing is about: is doing your best with whatever you got that day,
right?
And making that enough for the day and accepting that. And so, lessen the pain. And then there's another one called Grinding and Thriving, which is similar. That these are the things that teach us the most. We learn nothing when things come to us easily. And again, you can use the example of Tiger Woods. Not that things came to him easily, because he worked harder than everyone else. That's why he was so good, mentally and physically. But golf came easy to him, or it sure seemed like it to the mortals like us that were watching.
Exactly.
Right?
Can you think of a failure, just to kind of piggyback on that thought, can you think of a failure or a roadblock in your life that set you up for a later success? Is there a favorite example for you?
Let me finish. Let me think about that for a second.
Sure.
While I do, I'll finish what I was saying about Tiger. Is then we all got to witness him go through some really hard things in his life on and off the course.
Right.
Swing changes, disabilities from back pain, marital and life issues, all this stuff. He had to go through these challenges. And we all watched in awe that, oh my God, this grit, will he ever be the same again? Will he ever? No, he won't be the same again. None of us will ever be the same again. Whatever has happened has already happened, and that's gone. But will he ever get back to the point where he can win again and play at a high level again? And none of us knew. And admittedly, if you listen to him, he didn't know either.
No, for sure. He was about ready to quit.
Until you do it, you don't know. And that's why you try, and that's why you grind through those challenges. And so for me, yeah, again, we started this podcast off by talking about the challenge I threw myself into with writing this book. I was in a successful career as a entertainment guy, and I was making decent money. Granted, I was spending most of it and living life, doing the hashtag living my best life crap that we read on social media, which is usually never even close to the best life you could be living. And now I wanted to build a path to actually living my best life, really, accountably, and not in a show-off, materialistic way, but actually being fulfilled and happy by doing good things for myself and for others, because that's where, for me, the real joy comes in. And I threw myself into this pit of, it's basically, again, similar to what Tiger went through in his golf life, I went to in my career and my life, where I gave up the place that I was living in Hollywood, went to stay with a friend for about a year, and then ended up deciding to move back east and really dive into this thing where I wanted to build a career as a writer and a speaker, having no background in that, not knowing if it would ever work. And then living and staying with family and friends, because I had sort of given up a career and was doing some consulting to make a little bit of money, but really had spent a lot of the money or most of the money that I had made in my previous career, and was just kind of completely exposed to the universe as like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if I'm crazy or lazy or not giving into the hamster wheel that I should just get back on and go get a corporate job, even though I know it would make me miserable. And I can't tell you how confronting that was, Jason, and how many nights I lied awake staring at the ceiling going, what am I doing? I have no idea if this is going to work. I have no idea if this should work. And those moments of despair that we've all felt as humans and as golfers of, why do I even bother? What's the point?
What kept you going, do you think?
Well, I can tell you exactly what kept me going. I practiced the things that I was writing about in the book, and two of those major concepts are patience and faith.
I like it.
And I'm not talking about necessarily spiritual faith, although I'm a big proponent of that, and I do practice that, but it's not about that. Patience is the practice of things don't happen the way we want them to when we want them to. That's not the way life works. So when I first moved back to Boston, I went to a funeral of an older cousin of mine. She was 92, I believe, when she passed, and the priest told a story about when he went to see her to say, well, what do you want me to say at your funeral, basically? What's the most important thing you learned in life? And what she said was patience. That to just hang in there, and you don't know where things are going or when they're coming or how they're coming, but just to learn to practice patience. And then combine that, for me, then I took that to combine that with faith. That faith that things are going to work out the way they're supposed to work out. Not the way you want them to, but you're going to get the lessons that you need from golf and the lessons that you need from life. And that have faith that you're on the right path, unless you're in one of those situations where you're constantly banging your head off the wall. And for me, that was in the entertainment industry. I felt like I was literally constantly swimming upstream. It was exhausting because I wasn't on the right path. And then when I let go and let the current of the river take me, metaphorically, I was now on this crazy path that I didn't have complete control over, and that was terrifying. But I knew it was taking me to a better place because I wasn't struggling. And faith, I talked about the dream I had that led to the book. There was another dream I had at that time that was really intense and, again, almost felt and seemed crazy, but it was very real. And the dream was that I was showed the word faith. And I could see it brightly in my dream in front of my eyes. And there was a period after each letter, and then I got this message through that dream that faith stands for fostering awareness in the heart. And that's what I mean when I talk about faith, not necessarily spiritual faith, but
Gotcha.
learning the practice of getting out of your own mind. And we talked a little bit about that, of quieting your mind and listening to your intuition. And as golfers, I think that we need to look at that too. Again, we're all different, so we need to find the right combination of things. But there's a combination of a golf shot where you're mentally thinking about the shot that you're trying to hit. And then you're just kind of letting that go, and you've calculated all the information that you need. And then intuitively, what is the shot that I feel like I should hit right here? And a lot of times, that intelligence is a lot more intelligent than our brains. We're in a world that we're constantly caught up in our brains. And one of the things that I talk about in my speeches a lot is that these are monkey brains. There's,
Right.
thousands of years of evolution there, and they're pretty amazing mechanisms, but they're still monkey brains. But somehow in us, and again, I don't know how this works, I just know it works, we have this intuitive ability to connect to the intelligence that surrounds us, right? And we can make choices and decisions from that as opposed to our ego-based brains. And a lot of times, and I know I'm getting super philosophical here, but I'm doing it because I think that golfers need to realize this, that sometimes your brain is not your friend on the golf course, and that there's an intuition in us by where we can connect with faith, but it's also the intuition that can allow us to make good decisions. You're in a bunker or greenside, and you're trying to decide, is it a 60 degree or a 56 degree? Sometimes your brain isn't going to tell you the right answer, but you can just kind of let that go and go, what do I feel like is the right shot here? And that's the answer. And a lot of times that works.
Yeah, and you say allow intuition to have the most powerful voice. I like that. And that finding that inner quiet to clear the slate. I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's just what I was just talking about. We were just talking about that. Your brain is not always your friend. In fact, a lot of times it's your enemy. But the intuitive part of us and the feel, if we can learn to quiet that thing down. One thing I describe to my friends when they ask, well, how do you do this? And how do you live the way you live? And I say, well, one of the ways I do is that I put my ego in the back seat and I don't let it drive. As a professional golfer and a competitive golfer, that's a tricky one, right? Because those guys and gals need that ego.
Yeah, there has to be a little bit in there that has to be present.
Right, but how do you balance it? So how do you give it the steering wheel at the right time and then pick it up and put it in the back seat at the right time?
Sure.
And that's a tricky balance, not just for professional golfers, but for all people. What do you
think, 'cause aside from your book, obviously, have there been any other books that have influenced your life? I mean, you mentioned The Power of Now, which I read a long time ago. I thought was fantastic, from Eckhart Tolle. Are there any other books that have influenced your life and maybe helped you in your research?
Yeah, how much time you got?
We'll close after this one, I promise. May have to be a part two.
No, I say that facetiously because I could talk for hours about that too.
Just a couple of books.
First of all, I didn't do a lot of research specifically with books, but those things that I read are always in the back of my mind, right? So
yeah, it's part of your experience, right?
Yeah. The power and the part of the information base that I can then access later in life.
Sure.
Excuse me. And The Power of Now is one of the greatest ones. I joke a lot on my podcast and my talks that I promote other people's books more than my own because I've read so many great ones. So let me rattle off a few. First of all, The Power of Now, if you have not read it, is one of the most important and influential books that I've ever read. It's the practice of presence, that life only happens in brief moments, and that are right now and right now and right now and right now and right now. That's how life happens. But we as people get caught up in all the moments that have happened in our past, and we allow ourselves to be dragged back there. So on the golf course, that looks like, 3 holes ago I hit it in the water, but I'm still thinking about that as I'm trying to make this 8-foot par putt 3 holes later. Not a great way to make a par putt, right?
Right.
Or in golf, that looks like I'm trying to make this 8-foot par putt, and I know the number one handicap is next, and I got to hit a perfect tee shot into that perfect spot. But I'm not there yet. And I'm thinking about that now instead of the now moment that I'm in, which is this 8-foot par putt, and being present to just make this putt. And that next moment will happen when it happens. So I think for golfers, that's an amazing book to read because it's the practice of presence. And again, for all people. You talk about enjoy the journey, and that's the point of the whole book. One of the greatest books I've ever read, and I've now read it twice, is called The Book of Joy by the Dalai Lama and Bishop Desmond Tutu. And that's just all about making good choices and making choices to choose joy and happiness in your life and to live a happy life by practicing things like patience and forgiveness and acceptance and a lot of the things that I think about. It's an amazing book. Those two guys, you think of these spiritual leaders, they must be so serious. They're goofy, hysterical guys, and the stuff that they talk about and the way they talk about it is amazing. So that's another good one. And then for me, some of the other great spiritual books that I've read in my life are a lot of Deepak Chopra stuff. The Alchemist is one of my favorites. The Celestine Prophecy is one of my favorites. I mean, those are the books. I've read a lot of fiction books too. And Dan Brown's books that are part fiction, and a good friend of mine, David Brody, who writes in the Dan Brown style about pre-Columbian history in America and all the stuff that we don't know about. And I love those books. They're fun. But to me, the self-awareness books have always been the most fun for me to read and the most important for me to read. And it's no coincidence that that's the book that I ended up writing is a self-awareness book that's about golf. So it's light and silly and fun. But there's some really deep, important stuff in there, which you've identified, right?
Yeah. So we'll close with my favorite question, which I always enjoy these answers, is if you had to get a message to billions of people, which you're doing right now, what would it look like if you had to put it on a billboard, metaphorically, of course? What would you put on it and why?
Well, yeah, I mean, given what we're just talking about, it would be choose joy. Golf is a really difficult game. Life is a really difficult game. But we always have the ability to choose joy no matter what we're going through. And don't get me wrong, there are some really horrific things that can happen to us in life. And, you know, you have to choose sadness and grief to get through those at times. But 99% of the time in our lives and in our golf rounds, we can choose joy. And I don't think that we do it enough. And the reason why is because we often talk about, as people in this country and abroad, that we want to leave the world as a better place for future generations. But we don't put in the practice and the work that allows for the space for that to happen. And if we choose to love and respect each other, which is the same as saying the practice of choosing joy, then one day, if enough of us choose that, the world actually might be the way we want it to be. And that's on a grand scale. On a smaller scale, for a golfer, that just might be, you'll live a happier life. You'll play happier rounds because you're choosing to enjoy and see the silliness and the goofiness and the joy in the round of golf through the pain and the frustration that's not going to stop. But you can still choose joy on the other side.
I love it. That's a great way to close.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, Michael. Tell the listeners how they can buy the book, how they can reach out to you and give you a wave on social media, and then anything else that you want to add would be great.
Great, thanks. The book is, again, Zilosophy on Golf. It's spelled like philosophy, but with a Z instead of a PH. It's a play on my last name, Zildjian, and my view of the world and of golf. So Zilosophy on Golf. It's available on Amazon in paperback and Kindle. One thing we didn't touch on yet, that I'm actually here in Southern California. I'm in San Diego, and I'm going to be in LA. I'll be up at the Genesis Open, so you can look for me there and try and track me down. But one of the things I'm going to be doing in LA is finally recording the audio version of the book. I know a lot of people love that now, and that's how they read books, is by when they're sitting in traffic. So look for that soon. It'll be out audio, hopefully within the next couple of months, maybe even sooner. So that's Philosophy on Golf. Another way, if you're interested in this stuff and you like the way Jason and I talk here, You can listen to my podcast. It's called the Zilosophy Podcast. For you hardcore golfers out there, it's not a golf podcast. It's not a golf nerd podcast like I describe myself. I'm a golf nerd, and I love it. So there are golf nerdy moments in there for sure. And Jason Gore is going to be recording an episode of my podcast while I'm out here as well. I'm going to go up to Valencia and sit in his guitar room, and we're going to talk about golf and life and jam on some music and have a lot of fun. So there's a couple episodes now. That's available on iTunes and Spotify and anywhere else pretty much you hear podcasts like this awesome podcast. I love what you're doing here, by the way. We didn't get into that, but the fact that you've taken this approach to golf to me means a lot because, again, not only will it help a lot of golfers, I think the ripple effect of those golfers going out and living more fulfilled lives where they're more self-aware is something that we need in the world, and that will just make their communities better. And I really appreciate you taking this on to be one of those beacons of light in the world.
Absolutely. I appreciate that, the kind words, and thank you so much for your time, for coming on.
Yeah. I thank you, and I do. Sorry, I threw the compliment in there before I was done with my promo.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Let me just finish. On Instagram, you can follow me at Zilosophy on Golf. I don't tweet a lot. I do have a Twitter account, but once I get more followers, I will. So you can look me up there at Your Path Forward on Twitter, but at Zilosophy on Golf on Instagram is usually where I am, and also Zilosophy on Facebook. And for more information on the book, you can also check out the website, which is zilosophy.org. And as I said, I do mental coaching for players, so if you want to reach out, shoot me an email through the website or at info@zilosophy.org. And available for speaking gigs at high schools, golf academies, and church fairs, and anywhere else you want to have me. I'm out there. I want to spread these messages, so hit me up and let's connect. And again, Jason, I can't thank you enough for what you're doing for the golf community and for the world, and for letting me do 8 minutes of promo there at the end, which
That's
is what
okay.
it felt like.
That's what it's all about.
I appreciate it, man.
Absolutely,
and,
man. Thank you so much for coming on, and we will connect very, very soon.
Sounds great, man. I appreciate it. Listen to the Golf Guru. This guy knows what he's doing.
All right, man. Appreciate it, man. Later.
I care.
What's up, everybody? Guru back here again with a couple of things before you jump off. First, big thank you to Michael Zildjian for coming on the show and sharing some things that you can apply to your teaching, your golf game, and your life from his fantastic book, Zilosophy on Golf. Make sure you reach out to Michael and give him a social wave on the IG, the Facebook, or on the Twitter at Zilosophy on Golf, at Zilosophy on Golf on those platforms. And also check out his website at zilosophy.org, or go buy the book. It should be available on Amazon and shouldn't be that hard to find. And it's a really easy read, but I think you will thank me later because it definitely will give you some perspective on life and on golf, and then maybe a little bit on teaching, which was really, really cool. You can follow me and reach me on Twitter or Instagram at GolfGuruTV. Also, check out my website, golfgurutv.net, where you can find videos, articles, and more information on my teaching and coaching. And if you have a question or a comment, please don't be afraid to email the show, golfgurushow@gmail.com, or just hit me up on the DM. Thank you so much for everybody that reached out to me last week, telling me that they've enjoyed the show. More great guests are coming down the pipe. Made some great connections last week at the PGA show and the Teaching Summit that I think you're all going to be very excited about. I'm not going to give it away. You're just going to have to subscribe and download, please. That is the key. Download so we can keep this show going and possibly get more advertising and also more great guests, which I think you're going to enjoy. Leave me a iTunes review. That'll also help. Give me a rating. Let me know how I'm doing and how can I improve. And as I always leave you with the infamous Jim Rohn quote, study, practice, teach, and then pass it on. I'll talk to you next time. Thanks for listening.